But in the meantime, I just want to tell you a story that maybe you've heard it before, maybe you haven't. But the thing is, if you have heard it, maybe you'll find something new. It's one of those universal stories that once upon a time, there was a poor farmer who had a single horse and a teenage son. Well, one day his horse ran away, and a bunch of neighbors came over to the farmer and said, "Oh, how terrible, how awful. We're so sorry you've lost your horse," and other meaningless condolences. And the old man said, "Maybe, who knows? It could be good, it could be bad." And the neighbors just left. They didn't know what to make of his response. And a few days later, the horse came back, and with him were two wild horses. And the neighbors came by, they were rejoicing. "This is so great. Now you have three horses," and other meaningless congratulatory statements. And the farmer said, "Maybe, who knows? It could be good, it could be bad." And the neighbors left again, probably judging him a little bit at this point. Well, a few days after that, the man's son was riding one of the horses, and he fell off the horse and he broke his leg. It was a wild horse, it wasn't used to being ridden. And the neighbors came over again, offering condolences to the old man. His son wouldn't be able now to work in the fields and to help him. And the old farmer said, "Maybe, who knows? It could be good, it could be bad." I'd like to think that the son didn't hear this part because it was not very nice. It could be kind of mean. Well, a few days later after that, the army came to town, and every young man in the village was forced to go to war. It would be very incredibly so dangerous, and they would be unlikely to ever come home. But they couldn't take the farmer's son. He had a broken leg, so he stayed behind. So you've probably heard a version of the story before. We never know what's going to be next. We never know where things are going to lead. Sometimes not getting what we want is a good thing. Remember, so often we're wrong about what we want anyway. And sometimes, as Mick Jagger so forcefully reminds us, we don't always get what we want. Sometimes we get what we need. This is a very momentous time in history, in this America, in this global community, witnessing horrific bombing of a democratic nation. I have some sunflowers here next to me. I understand the sunflowers are the national flower of the Ukraine. So equanimity may not describe what most of us are striving for right now. Many of us are striving for healing, for justice, some of us for survival. And especially at times like this, equanimity has great power. It's when these times when we see beyond judgment and beyond self-interest and realize that we are choosing rather than reacting. Times when the pain and the stress of these last days, these weeks, these years is held in our heart while the mind remains still and steady, clear. Those times when we make small choices that grow great care and influence our spiritual and our social balance. This is the power of equanimity. And it can feel internally like this great mountain with the mind solid and stable, undisturbed by the changing seasons, or like a great ocean with the mind vast and deep and immeasurable, undisturbed by whatever swims or floats or is housed in its waters. Equanimity can be like a strong fire, roaring, enduring, engulfing, transmuting, undisturbed by whatever is thrown into it. Or like immense space, open, allowing, receiving, undisturbed by the things, the objects that arise and pass away. Equanimity enables us to know the energetic movements of mind without reactivity. This experience of grounded presence in the midst of extremes. When the mind is steady, responsive, we can say to ourselves, this moment is like this moment. It doesn't have to be different, even with that echo that I'm hearing, and maybe you are too, because I can allow it to be here and offer what is needed, because this moment is all we really know and have. To be present, to allow the breath to come and go, to be mindful of each other and what it is we can offer at that right moment. So imagine the power of this inner resource in this messy world that we're living in. And yet equanimity is not something we can force. It's an experience we have to recognize. We have to nurture it through our awareness, our practice. I think to what Charles Fillmore, our Unity co-founder, would say about the second coming. He would say the first coming is that Christ energy, that divinity that we're all born with. But the second coming is our awareness of that. So we are given so many gifts, but we have to nurture so many of them. We can't be so random, especially now. Now, once upon a time, there was a monk who lived at the edge of a very small town, much to the delight of the townspeople. And whenever he ventured into town to help somebody, to teach, everyone came out of their homes to give him gifts from their gardens and calling out, "Oh, teacher, we are so fortunate to have you living nearby. You're such a wonderful person. You do so much good. Your presence is such a blessing." And to all of this, the monk would always reply, "Is that so? Is that so?" Well, one day a young woman from the village came to the monk's hut and said, "Oh, teacher, I'm in terrible trouble. I'm with child. My family has disowned me. My love has disappeared. I love him so much, but he had to flee because my parents threatened to kill him, do him harm. There's nowhere else I have to turn. There's no one else I have to ask for help." And the monk said, "Well, you could come and live here in this back room. You could help around the house and have security for yourself and for your child." Well, now when the monk came into town, he was reviled. "You dirty old man, look how you've betrayed our trust and taken advantage of this young woman. How could you do this? How could we have ever believed in you? What shame you brought upon us." And they hurled rotten fruit at him instead of giving him the gifts of their gardens. And to all this, the monk would always reply, "Is that so? Is that so?" Well, after a while, the father of the child returned to the village, to the town, and presented himself to her family and said, "I've spent the last 2 years in a neighboring town learning a trade so I could take care of my family. Please, I can provide a home now for my wife, for my love, for your daughter, for your grandchild." Well, the family was overjoyed. It wasn't an ideal situation, but it was so much better than they'd feared, and they welcomed their daughter and their grandchild back into their family. And how different it was this time now when the monk came to town. The townspeople lined the road every time, presenting him with gifts. "Oh, teacher, how could we have ever doubted you? Look at this wonderful thing you've done. We're so ashamed. Please forgive us. You're so wise. You're so compassionate." And to all of this, the monk would reply, "Is that so? Is that so? Is that so? Is that so?" What kind of place do we need to hold inside to be able to have that kind of response? To not have all those emotions and upsets and judgments get to us. I mean, we can say that the entire spiritual path rests on the development and the cultivation of this one particular mind state. I know that in my practice, and probably in yours too, I love it when people say, "I can't meditate because I can't slow down my mind." Well, that's why it's called a practice. Because the practice is not to be distracted by those thoughts. Those thoughts don't stop. Those circumstances don't stop. I don't think Putin is stopping today. And yet, how do we hold that in order to be of service to ourselves first, to our community? There's a translation in Tibetan Buddhism from the Pali language of the word equanimity, and it refers to a certain balance, neutrality of mind. And the word is the middleness, there in the middleness. Isn't that gorgeous? The quality of mind is there in the middleness between extremes. This quality of this highly developed and cultivated quality, because it doesn't just happen, brings us this unshakable quality of mind, living in the middleness. There's tremendous strength in that. And we have to take a little bit of care because we don't mean indifference. We mean a neutrality of mind, not a pulling away, not an apathy, not I don't want to deal with it. That's really the opposite of equanimity. There are states of mind that can look like equanimity, but they're limited. And we don't want to confuse that neutrality of equanimity with this disconnection we have when we just like move away and say, I'm not dealing with it. And we begin to see that equanimity is not an indifference at all. It's rather, this is what I love, the term I love, a spacious impartiality. Impartial might be the better word. Spacious impartiality. Cultivating a spacious impartiality. I love that. It's beautiful. It's not indifferent, it's impartial. We can balance this cool, restful balance of our mind and this peace that we've worked on. I know so many of you have been truth students, unity students, meditators for many years, and you've been practicing this. I mean, imagine living in the world where we're not touched by these endlessly changing conditions, this gain and loss and praise and blame and fame and disrepute and pleasure and pain. But when we have this equanimity of mind, we ride these changes with an ease, with a balance, with confidence, with peace. We need equanimity to have our equilibrium. Because as soon as we're attached to something that's mine, I want it, we lose that. We get into some kind of mental turmoil. Once again, there was a simple monk who only had a mat and a bowl for his food, a simple extra shirt, a simple extra pair of trousers, a few small apples, a half a loaf of bread in his small little hut. And one day when he's away in the village, he returns to find all of it stolen. And he writes a koan. Now, you probably know a koan is this paradoxical antidote, a riddle. It's used in Zen Buddhism to demonstrate the inadequacy of logical reasoning. The inadequacy of logical reasoning sometimes, and to provoke enlightenment. So he comes back, he looks and sees everything gone. And he says, the moon at the window, the thief left it behind. You come home, all the material stuff is gone. The moon at the window, the thief left it behind. Quite a high level of mental development, of equanimity, wouldn't you say? You know, we assess, it's a good day, our minds are calm, it's a good day. And then we want it to stay that way. And then the next day that calm is gone and we think there's a loss, the gain and the loss. And how are we with this? I mean, these dualities, when it's really all one thing and we say, is that so? Is that so? Is that so? I mean, what happened, my spiritual practice was going so well and I was so light and I felt so joyful all the time. And then things happened, which have certainly happened in this last couple of weeks in the world that have shaken, the very core of my being. I just have to say, I'm very disturbed. And I can't deny it and cover it up, but how do I hold it? How do I hold this disturbance and know this is going on, and yet at the same time that's going on? These people are suffering in this way. These other people are suffering in this other way. People are trying to help and support what's going on in the world, to help people very basically have warm clothing and food and medical aid in the midst of some of this craziness. Did I do something wrong that I'm upset? Conditions change, experiences change, gain and loss. Is that so? Do we practice this metaphysical malpractice on ourselves that we should be different? We should be more spiritual and different. we get praise, we get blame. I have to say, I hadn't been planning on speaking this month another time because I already have something else scheduled. But then Reverend Larry called me. We love you. You're so good. They will love you so much, And it's like, oh well, okay then, I want to be here because, oh. But then we started talking about Easter. And then it was like, I want to be here Easter, but I also want to be here for Palm Sunday because I love that journey, that palm strewn journey that Jesus takes into the holy city for the Passover and all the events of that week, and then Easter and a resurrecting spirit. So I have that joy too. So I hope it's okay with all of you because I'll be back with you for Palm Sunday and Easter. So I said yes. There's such a growing fascination and attachment to fame. Do you know that I find this fascinating, in 1976, people in the United States on a scale of 16 possible life goals, number 15 out of 16 was a principal ambition was to be famous. The 15th thing on the list of 16. 30 years later, 51% of people said their principal ambition in life is to be famous. Period. I mean, that's amazing to me. Not because you created world peace or a cure for cancer, but just to be famous. In a different survey, at least twice as many said they'd rather be a celebrity's personal assistant than the president of Harvard University. And recently, a study was found that the desire for fame solely for the sake of being famous was the most popular future goal of a group of 10 to 12-year-olds, overshadowing financial success, achievement, a sense of community, doing good in the world. What's happening? What are we missing? What's seductive? I mean, whether you're in that 51% or not, there's this allure of fame and this fear of disrepute. Anything can happen anytime. And none of that has to do with us. It exists in the minds of other people, how they see us. Remember that book, What You Think of Me Is None of My Business? I mean, isn't that great? Because it's true. I know who I am. And I constantly fine tune this sense of, is that so? Is that so? Is that so? His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, I try to treat everyone I meet as an old friend. There was a book you might have seen, I can't quite remember the name of it, but it was about joy, and it was a recounting of this birthday celebration for the Dalai Lama, where Desmond Tutu came to see the Dalai Lama in northern India, and they celebrated and they made videos. I think some of those videos are available now. They wrote this book. I thought, if those two men can live in joy, can hold everything that they hold with that spirit of loving and of seeing the bud break, it's just extraordinary for me. So who am I to be upset because somebody left the toilet seat up? Right? I mean, right? Don't we get a little nutsy? Teacher once said, at some point, the mind becomes so clear and balanced that whatever arises is seen and left untouched, with no interference. One ceases to focus on any particular content. All is simply mind and matter. In emptying, arising, and passing away, there is no longer doing. I mean, I think that's kind of like cosmic consciousness or awakening or nirvana. Pretty amazing. So with that, right now, I'd like to invite you to become still. It is said there's no higher happiness than peace. And this experience of equanimity, of spacious impartiality, gives us that taste. So if it's comfortable for you, allow your eyes to close right now and pausing just enough, because there's something about this pause, the power in the pause. Pausing enough to feel your body just sitting where it is, to notice your breathing, inviting a smile to your eyes, a slight smile to your mouth. a smile at the heart, a smile at the belly. And allow yourself to be with yourself in this moment that is yours alone, completely. That is you, that is yours. We'll just take just a few seconds of silence as we sit in this knowingness of the beauty of the present moment. As the breath arises, and then let's go. As you remember that you are the Christ of God in expression. As you are completely protected and surrounded and filled with the light and love beyond comprehension. That is your true nature. Breathing in, breathing out. Nowhere to go, nothing to do. Let the words from my mouth be the words of your own heart. I see things just as they are. I remain peaceful and let go of fixation. I find the inner resources to genuinely contribute where it's needed. I see my limits with compassion, just as I see the limits of others. My way is not the only way. All beings have their own journey, and I have mine. And so may I be free from preference and prejudice. May I see the world with quiet eyes. May I meet each moment exactly as it is, remaining steady as the world around me shifts and changes. Still in this peaceful place, take these words again deeply into your own heart. May I meet each moment exactly as it is, remaining steady as the world around me shifts and changes. God is so good, and I connect with that goodness every moment that I remember. The moon at the window, the thief left it behind. And so gently and lovingly, peacefully, allow your eyes to flutter open and allow your awareness to be in this time and space once again. Remembering who and what you are. Shalom. Namaste.